I'm here to proudly proclaim that the backbone of the recession is broken. And from the back corner of the room, I said, ha. And he says, oh, isn't it funny? The only Republican in the room says, ha. I said, what do you have for a solution? He said, what do you want to see? Slots at the tracks? I said, I don't want to see us necessarily building our budget around increased gaming revenue. And I do worry about that. But I also know that I do have a jobs bill that affects a local race course down in my district. And I've been very dismayed that they continually hook up this simple job expansion that would generate maybe $100 million a year to something far greater than that I think might compromise the Commonwealth as we know it.
So can you may be in the unique position, you have the possibility of voting twice on the casino bill.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you explain your first vote, and what would you try to do if you were a senator to change the bill in ways that...
It's what I've been trying to do all along, and I actually spent some time under the bus.
Can you be specific?
Yes, I will. I'll be specific.
Okay.
I think that the critical piece in there right now is the slot machines, and I know leadership doesn't agree with me on this. But as a small businessman, sometimes you have to take baby steps before you take the big steps. Sometimes the baby steps are the best choice rather than the big step. Right now we have 17 businessmen, 16 of whom reside in Massachusetts, who pay taxes here, who support a plethora of horse farms and things that are open space and all kinds of things that are here in the Commonwealth. It's a business that's been there in our district for 75 years between Foxborough and Plainridge. It's something that's been accepted. It has created no large-scale gambling disorders or things that are related to it. And it's something that I think needs to be separated from the casinos. They continually focus on, as from a union perspective, those jobs which they can create or may create that aren't even in existence yet, at places that don't even exist yet, that are going to be 5 to 8 years down the line. It would take a massive public investment to create these places and these venues. And yes, in a good economy, those venues will produce tons of revenue as they did down in Connecticut and to some of those communities as well. But it is out-of-state entities that come in and stick their straw into the well, and they're sucking money out of the Commonwealth, not pumping it in. So from my small business perspective and creating small jobs, if we are sincere about other types of job growth that's maybe a little bit more, or viewed a little bit more positively than gambling, I would suggest that starting here, where we already know we can capture maybe $100 million a year, is something we should have done about a year or two ago. And we
so can you just say, like, hey, I would do this, I would want to do this? Can you give me a...
Well, one of the things I think is important, I know my opponent is against any expansion in gaming at all. That alarms me, because I have worked for 6 years to keep Plainridge and the tracks on the plate as far as recognizing their potential and what I think is their value for generating tax revenue, and that is a small business perspective, and it does address jobs in the economy. From that perspective, I would look at myself as being that person that would keep them involved in the process on the other side. I was on a committee, the Economic Development Committee is one that I poised myself on, so that I would have some influence in this matter. And in the last go-around 2 years ago, when we looked at this particular matter, I was on the committee, and it was pretty much the same bill we okayed this time. But as we came down to the wire in the 11th hour, tracks were taken out. So I went to the speaker and talked to him about that. And he said, well, I think we don't think there's enough money that's going to be made from that over the long term. And I said, but in the short term, now's when we need the money. And the governor said he was going to veto it as well. So I went and talked to him and literally took it to the 11th hour and went down and cast my vote against a bill that I had supported because it did have a local interest to me. It did include my local constituents. So on that issue, they perceived that I changed my vote when indeed it's just I wasn't supporting them because they had basically abandoned my local communities. It was a local jobs bill for us. So I think my role on this side would be to try to keep this bill intact and to have them not strip out the tracks again, because there's some chatter about the fact that they think that the horse tracks are not the entity they want to see in there. So we'll see.
Casino gambling, slots. You and your opponents seem to be on slightly different sides of the issue here. You talk from a health perspective. Maybe you can restate that for us.
Sure.
And how did that fits in? The argument could be that, well, there's a market there for gamblers,
right,
and they're just going to take their business up to other states.
Right.
So how do you compromise that with your opinion on the matter?
Absolutely. I guess I would say that my focus on gambling is much more than a health concern. In fact, frankly, it's even more of just a dollars and cents. It's an economic perspective, which is that in states that have tried to revive or improve their economies by focusing on gambling, it just hasn't worked. It simply has not worked to revive their economy. And one of the reasons for that is that when casinos come into place, it causes harmful effects to local businesses. We're talking about community restaurants, hotels, other local tourism, that really suffers when you focus everything on one casino. And that's within a 10-mile radius or so from those casinos. And you have to make trade-offs as legislators. We can't just talk about one side of the issue without talking about what the downsides are going to be. So if we're going to be putting money into casinos and benefiting largely the casino itself, but causing real harmful effects to local businesses, I'm not sure that's a trade-off that I'm willing to make. The other thing, frankly, is that it's really hard for us to actually talk about the revenue projections or job projections without having an independent cost-benefit analysis of casinos in this state. And at least if we could start with that and have a transparent discussion about the issue, and then we can talk about it on much more educated terms than if we just sort of had a clouded discussion like we have been.
So what do you think about the bill that's currently was debated recently and got passed in one of the houses?
Right.
I mean, where would you see changes, or do you want to start from scratch?
I'm just not in favor of casinos, introducing casinos in any form into Massachusetts.
Slots?
No. Slots are even worse than casinos because you don't have the even close to construction jobs that casinos you talk about. And slots are purposefully made to be predatory towards those who can least afford to pay for it. I'm talking mostly about the elderly and those in lower income groups who really spend every last dime on slots. And that's intentionally done the way that slots are designed.
As a public official, just philosophically, is it right to shape statewide legislation to benefit a single politically connected business owner?
I don't believe it is, except that we already have a track record of a business that's existed here. They're tax-paying citizens. They've made an investment in the Commonwealth that has already been profitable for us. I don't think.
But you want to give him a line of business that nobody else has access to. No other business person could qualify to set up a slots parlor.
Actually, there's 2 other tracks. It would be, the Suffolk model. All of those folks would be involved as well.
3 well-connected business owners.
Well, that's not the way I look at it, because I see that they're already there. I think you're running into the same trap or the same pitfall as with the casinos. If you start looking at trying to find a new place to inoculate a new population of people with the fact that they're going to have gambling there and it's going to be centered around slots parlors, I think it's going to be a hard sell, and I think it's going to be something that is going to be hard to get the culture to come behind.
But your colleagues out in the western part of the state will say, wait a minute, you're letting 3 businesses over in the eastern part of the state get in on this industry,
and that's why
we could use this.
We've got the casinos still in the mix, and obviously they'll be able to bid on those the same way as everybody else. And I think as far as allowing for the folks to compete in a competitive market, for the ability to have casinos in their neck of the woods, I think that's the process. And that's the compromise. I think that's the hard compromise that you sometimes have to make as a legislator. When you realize that you might not be 100% for the whole bill, but there's pieces in it that will allow for some relief in the short term, which is, I think the question is right now, it's about what relieves the pressure from the job and economy needs that we have now. And as you felt it get worse and worse the last couple of years, we've missed the boat for 2 years in a row on maybe $100 million that could have come into state coffers. At the same time, we're having to see some of the vital services around human services and the elderly and all of those other things get cut. I would like to have thought that we could have maybe have seen something that was already there, a business that's already running. We support the people, get out of the way, get government out of the way of business, let them do what they do because they're here. Let them generate the revenue. And then what happens with the casinos and all of the larger venture things 6 or 8 years out, let those happen in their time frame as well. But what you see right now is they're trying to protect something that doesn't already exist, the casinos. They're so afraid that these entities are going to take enough of the revenue off the top right now, but it doesn't matter that it's going back to the state and to good things, that they are looking at that bigger model. And I think it's folly to not recognize what we already have.